with everything going on in Venezuela, the earthquakes, and doing the training on the Patreon channel, this almost got by me. The 1 year anniversary of the issue with the USS McCain. I remember getting woken up by a whole bunch of notifications after doing the investigation into the Fitzgerald. We were about 2 months into it, and reading that it had happened again was the crux of all of the notifications, that there had been yet another destroyer with the same issue. It was very odd, and I didn't want to get caught up in something we call, of course, availability heuristic or causation correlation. And we've covered this over on the Patreon channel, the difference between two things correlating, not necessarily being the cause of each other. When I looked into this and saw all of the information, it seemed almost as if what the Navy was saying was pretty close to what probably did happen. I did have some very fundamental questions, though. But one of the things that absolutely sent me into a rage was the willingness of a certain group of people in my audience to blame the last administration and besmirch the honor and the integrity and professionalism of our sailors, as if it matters who's president. I was in during the changeover from Bush to Clinton, and I don't remember anybody at that time saying, oh, don't have to do our job now, or, oh, I guess we're just going to screw off now because we have a, Democrat president. But that was the allegation, and that came from people as high up as Michael Savage. I saw this, and that's was the reason I took up the mantle for the sailors of the Fitzgerald and the McCain, to make sure that no matter what, that their sacrifice wasn't sullied. They have, meaning the Navy, has backtracked greatly on the charges against those commanders in charge directly, and their own reports say why. One of the things that was distinctly different about the John McCain report as opposed to the Fitzgerald was the time. Everything that occurred from when things were fine to when the collision happened was like 5 minutes. What happened with the Fitzgerald took place over an hour. And this was my problem with the dereliction story. Like, when you look at this report here, you see all of these different events. They change here at page 64 to describing things in hour, minute, second. Like, for example, these 11 things that you see here starting at 5:19 and going all the way down to 5:22, you're talking 2 minutes. All of these different orders were changed. There was definitely confusion. And from the time there was a problem noticed to the time the problem had been addressed by 4 different sailors on board, and the problem fixed, was less than 5 minutes. It was just a minute too late. And given their own description of the problem being that allegedly the helmsman was unfamiliar with the controls of this vessel, which would have been a cross-decking issue, something the commander of the ship had absolutely zero control over, I don't know how you charge him with anything at that point. If you have a forward operating unit in a combat environment and they would have sent a bunch of us MI guys as reinforcements and the place got overran, yeah, probably would be, you can't be surprised at that. And, vice versa. If we were short on intelligence assets and they sent us a bunch of grunts, probably intelligence was going to suffer for that. It's just everybody has a job. And certain people do certain things well, not because they're better than others, just because they've been trained at it. And if this was truly a training issue, a cross-decking training issue, this had nothing to do with the the last administration or this administration would have had to do with 7th Fleet. I personally don't think we have any business being over there for any reason. I think we should hold the line at the Pacific and be done. And it looks like history is going to agree with me on this. All that traffic in there, all of that commercial traffic, this is just a nightmare waiting to happen over and over again. There's no strategic assets in the South China Sea for the United States. Do we have a right to transit there? I suppose. But having a right to do something and something being the right thing to do are not always the same thing. And if you want to look at this whole Obama Navy thing, this thing with Savage really set me alight, because I thought for sure this guy was going to look into this, especially with the Fitzgerald, and uncover everything that we uncovered. But all he wanted to do was that sledgehammer to hit the last administration with that they hadn't had in a year, and then dropped it and moved on to something else ridiculous. These guys deserved better. They really deserved a lot better than what we did. These are kids, and they do the jobs to the very best of their ability. And I know it sounds like a hard thing to say if you're out there and you're 20 and 21 and I'm calling you a kid. It's just when you get to be 50, you start to look back when you were that age, and you're like, wow, I was a kid. And you're tired all the time, and you're hungry all the time, and you got a lot of stress, you got a lot on your plate, and that it doesn't happen more often is a testament, given the level and the pace and the tempo of training and operations, especially the last 10 to 15 years. That's why I've always said I think we should increase the amount of people in our armed services, but bring them home. Get them out of these ridiculous forward operating environments that are going to do nothing but cause us problems, Asia being el numero uno. Can you imagine if we had the 7th Fleet assets securing our southern border? Can you imagine if we had them to bolster the 4th Fleet? There wouldn't be anything getting through the Gulf. Nothing. And isn't that the big concern now? We see this whole Molly Tibbetts thing and illegals and all this nonsense. What are we gaining over there? Nothing but a headache. And I know this sounds like I'm preaching, but, you know, we got 17 dead kids. During peacetime operations, we just had another one go missing over there that they just declared dead off the Essex. We lost one off the Statham. We lost one off the Normandy. Well, the Normandy, I guess, was one here domestically. But you get my point. It doesn't seem like, I would like to have somebody out there, my Navy guys, if they could, please elaborate for me and illuminate for our audience. What is the U.S. gaining? Do the risk-reward analysis. I mean, are the assets, the allies that we have in China, in Asia, worth what we've lost in blood and treasure at this point? I don't personally think so. It's their backyard. Let them play in their backyard. We don't have a whole bunch of Chinese destroyers running around, 1 mile off our, outside of international waters. Here, and there's a lot of traffic that goes through the Panama Canal. And I bet China could probably make the allegation that that canal is very, very important to their trade, their commerce. But we don't see their warships down there. We see them making inroads with El Salvador and countries in the region. But they don't just sail their warships down through that area just for the sake of doing it. To say it's, it's freedom of navigation. We can do it, so we're going to do it. And like I'm saying, it's not like they don't. They have the ability to. It just goes to judgment. Why? given the now what's going to end up being, what, billions of dollars we've lost between the Fitz and the McCain. There's a lot that could be said about the timing of all of this with North Korea and how it all magically went away. It was just that tiny little fraction in time, and strangely enough, when North Korea stopped, acting up, all of these accidents stopped as well. And we didn't see him in any other fleet. Didn't really see him in any other service. So, but we'll leave it there. Just remember these guys' families in your thoughts and prayers. And we'll see you next time. Like, share, subscribe.